It's the BoxCast podcast. I'm Gary, community manager. Welcome back. Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you one of my favorite humans on the face of the earth. He's a great guy. He's also a local pastor here in the Ohio area. But before we get there, let me just direct your attention down to the descriptions below. Listen, if you are interested in anything with BoxCast related, we've got a new product called Sites Out. It's an amazing tool to help you build a custom website for your church. Please go right into the description. Go ahead and click that button. Again, hit the like, subscribe, and also share this out with your friends. That helps the algorithm get us to where we want to be. We love doing content like this where we can talk with people who help you in the local church space. All right, enough of that. Let's get into our discussion today. Today, we're going to talk with Matt Miller out of Worship Team Coach. He is the CEO and owner of the platform, and he is here to discuss with us about everything Worship Team Coach related and what they do. And we're going to kind of dive in a little bit about how you can become a more effective leader in your worship.
The sole purpose of why Worship Team Coach exists, is based on Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, right?
Right.
We exist to equip and empower worship leaders so they can empower and equip their teams, right? Based off Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, that our role as ministry leaders is to equip the saints to do the work of ministry. And that's why we exist, and that's why I'm so passionate about what we do, because there's so many people that are just trying to get through Sunday, and there's that Sunday after Sunday grind. They're on that Sunday treadmill, and a lot of leaders are just kind of Sunday-driven managers, right? And so we want to make sure that we're able to develop our people not just musically, but relationally and spiritually as well, because that's really what we should be doing.
All right, Matt. Hey, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, Gary. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see you. I'm glad that you're hanging in there. It seems like summer's been good to you.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's nice to we're getting ready to kind of launch stuff in fall, and everybody's kind of back in the swing of things, and kind of the restart of a new season. It's great.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to talk with you here. I am so excited because we are not related, but we have some relation and friendships between other people. But I really liked what Worship Team Coach was doing. And so when I kind of found out more about the product and the service, I wanted to dive in a little more. I wanted to get into the know, and I wanted to bring you on because we have a lot of people in our space here. Since BoxCast works and helps churches, we have a lot of people in the church space who actually need what you guys provide. So why don't you do that for me? Give me a little bit of background about yourself and Worship Team Coach and what it is you guys do.
Yeah. So myself, I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God. On that, there's no nothing else besides that, right? And so I've been a worship person. I don't want to get into titles and that type of stuff, but I've been in ministry for a long time. And at a previous church, I was looking for some resources to help equip my team because I couldn't do it all by myself. Right. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like that full-time volunteer, but we were working a job as well, that type of thing. And so I was looking for some resources, specifically like a worship team devotional. And I stumbled upon a resource from John Nickel, and it was called Heart Check. That was the devotion. And kind of looking through more of his resources that he offered to worship teams. The first course I really dug into would have been Lead Worshiper 101. And I was like, oh, that's right. And so I checked that out and got that for my team. And then I really just kind of drank the Kool-Aid. All the worship team resources, to be honest with you. And so got to know John a lot and went through all of his material. And I was a coaching client of his, and then I actually came on board on staff as a coach. And then earlier this year, John reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in acquiring the company. And I was like, yeah, let's go, man. And I mean, because like from day one of just working with John, I remember my wife was like, "You're going to own this one day," and I was like, "That'd be cool." And so I really believed in the resources that John was providing for people. I mean, the content was amazing, and so I was just a satisfied customer,
right?
And so when John offered me the opportunity to purchase the company, I jumped right on it.
Right.
And so yeah, we've been head coach now for since June 1, so a few months now, and things have been great. And the sole purpose of why Worship Team Coach exists, is based on Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, right?
Right.
We exist to equip and empower worship leaders so they can empower and equip their teams, right? Based off Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, that our role as ministry leaders is to equip the saints to do the work of ministry. And that's why we exist, and that's why I'm so passionate about what we do, because there's so many people that are just trying to get through Sunday, and there's that
Mhm.
Sunday after Sunday grind. They're on that Sunday treadmill, and a lot of leaders are just kind of Sunday driven managers, right? And so we want to make sure that we're able to develop our people not just musically but relationally and spiritually as well, because that's really what we should be doing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what um, worship leaders or just in general leadership needs to be about, right?
Mhm.
Is maintain that focus. We'll get into more of that here in just a little bit. But
Cool.
so, a worship team coach actually has multiple pieces to it. I know that, right?
Mhm.
There's worship team coach, and then there's worship workshop. Can you
Correct.
give me a little bit about what worship workshop is?
Yeah, so Worship Workshop is our online team training platform, right? So that is done for you content that is specifically for your team, and we have some pathways that they kind of walk through, and so that's Worship Workshop. So that's all the stuff for team training development. And then Worship Team Coach is more for the actual worship leader. That's where we dive into our systems that we use for ministry, our onboarding system, our song
Mhm.
selection system, our training and development system, like all these systems that we use, and being able to kind of renovate those systems of ministry to be able to multiply and duplicate leaders. So I tell
Yeah.
people it's like the not flashy stuff, right? So we've been like just the masters of the mundane. Like, I guarantee if there's worship leaders watching this right now, I'm sure a lot of them probably don't have just a tried and true process for getting somebody on the team and then training and developing them through, and then having them be able to mentor and lead another person, right? And we just have
Right.
this like stuff done for you, almost to the point where it's like just insert church name here and then take this and run with it. So we, again, masters of the mundane, and just providing resources for people that actually saves them time, because there's a lot of leaders out there who are just trying the best that they can, and
Mhm.
they might still be working a job and that type of thing, and they're just trying to get through the 4 to 5 songs and hoping everybody shows up on Thursday night for rehearsal, or some of
Right.
them don't even have rehearsal midweek. They're just praying everybody comes on Sunday. Right?
Right.
They're
And they're
like,
doing
hey,
the
let's
rehearsal
just
an hour
make this
before.
work.
Yeah, and they're
So,
doing that
so we
rehearsal an
get
hour before service.
oh yeah, yeah, and that's so my question for them is like, how's that working out for you?
Right, yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Yeah.
Most
When
of the
was the
time it
last
don't
time
work.
you had a Sunday off and you didn't get that distress call? You know,
Right. No, there's never been a Sunday that I haven't got that distress call.
this
Never
isn't
been a
working.
Sunday.
The live stream's going down. All these things. Yeah, we're
I've had
getting
people call
feedback
me
like
and
crazy. I can't
yep,
hear any. My
exactly.
in-ears are all jacked up. Yeah,
Right.
all that stuff.
Well, and then you got Sister Crystal walking back and forth crying and hugging onto the blankets that are available because it's too cold in the building. Yeah,
Yes.
and then she doesn't know what's going on. No, I completely get that, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I've had that call so many times on a Sunday morning. In fact, I've had it on a Saturday night, which is like you're on vacation, you're like just getting settled in. Yeah, I know that
Yeah,
feeling.
you see
So,
that. You see that come up on your phone. You're like, and you got.
should I answer this?
So, I mean, like one of our one of our core values is actually tripling people's time off.
Oh, okay.
And so
I
we
like
believe
that.
like there's 3 types of Sundays that the leader or facilitator or whatever title you give that worship person or persons, right?
Sure.
There's 3 types of Sundays. And one is the Sunday where you're just off, right? I mean, you're away, you're not at church, you're not visiting another church, you're not at a conference. I mean, you are away, like kind of your Sabbath
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And so a lot of leaders don't get that, right? And so the
True.
next one is the Sunday that you're off the platform, but you're in a pew or a chair or whatever, right? And it's because it's important for the congregation to see you as a worshiper as well, like kind of among them, right?
Mhm.
And because if Sunday morning can't happen without the leader, then that's on the leader.
Right.
Right? And so that's kind of the second one. And then the third Sunday off is like where they're at like a conference for like continuing education or something like that. But yeah, so we just find that a lot of leaders don't even, have like 3 Sundays off a year. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we just feel that's just like, that's poor systems, right? We believe that, every people problem can be traced back to a system problem.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we talk a lot about being 3 deep, and like kind of like a depth chart, right?
Right.
Like using a sports analogy there.
Little coaching action.
Right. Yeah. And not, yeah. And not just the 3 deep in terms of like, hey, we got 3 drummers, we got 3 acoustic guitarists. It's like, you got a 3 deep yourself.
Right.
Right. If you have
Yeah.
3 people that can do everything that you do on a regular Sunday morning and throughout the week, like if you don't have 3 people who can do the planning center stuff, if you don't have
Yeah.
3 people who can lead a devotional, if you don't have 3 people who can open a service, who can close the service, right, or your gathering, whatever you call your Sunday morning time, right? If you don't have 3 people that can do what you do, then you're not an effective leader, right? Because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, right, and it's like Sunday's still coming, right? Whether I'm here or not. And so we have to have that mindset of like, we have to be able to remove ourselves from the platform and Sunday morning still happen well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if it's
Mm-hmm.
fully relying on just us being there, that's not sustainable. Right. And it creates that, you kind of like that rock star mentality of like, well, it's just different when I'm not there. Like, no, just swallow your pride, bro. It ain't about you, And so,
That makes sense.
it's about, again, developing leaders. Right.
Yeah.
And again, that's the hard way though, because it's a lot easier. And like, I'm sure people are watching this of like, well, it's just easier if I just go up there and lead every song. Yeah, it is. It's a lot easier. And it probably sounds really good. Right.
Right. But that developmental thing of being a leader requires you to delegate properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And it's the thing, like, look, man, the church doesn't want to hear you sing every song, bro. Like, and I'm talking to myself like, 15 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. I was going to say, you're preaching yourself,
I say all this stuff. Yeah. Because I was that guy, and it's like, well, I have the degree in music education. Right. And so I know how to do this. And I've been in ministry for a long time. And, I went to a Bible college, right. That type of stuff. It's like, dude,
that was a good Mr. Monopoly impression.
Well, thank you. There we go. Yeah.
Good job. Mr. Monopoly already joining us for the podcast episode today. That was really good.
Yeah. Just a little guest appearance,
I'm going to ask you if you could do maybe Mario next time.
That's going to cost. I think it's a free interview, right?
Oh, so, this is, technically it is free.
Yeah. It is, right? Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Put a Thrive Cart link in the bottom, right? Just click that.
That's right. Shop now, guys, right in the description.
Right. Let's go. Yeah. Go ahead, man.
No, you're good, man. I was going to say, you once said to me that when you start developing great people, you cannot help but have great Sundays. And I feel that that's like a pivotal statement that you've made to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've used it many, many times in the past, which is why it's something that you said it. I haven't even taken all of the courses, but I've gone in and I'm realizing that as a worship tech leader, right, in our church, the guy handling all the ministry side that handles like online and audio and all that jazz, that it applies as well. So when you actually start developing great people, you can't help but have great Sundays. So do me a favor, Matt, elaborate just a little bit more on why developing great people is on the forefront that leads to great Sundays.
Yeah, well, first of all, that that phrase came from John Nickel and came from his book, Exceptional Every Sunday. This white one back here, yeah, that one. Links in the bottom of the description to get that book. It's awesome. And so that's really kind of the whole premise for that book is any team can have a great Sunday every once in a while. You think of the heavy hitter Sundays, you think of the Christmas Eve services, you think of Easter, those types of things where it's like, oh man, that was awesome, right? And it's like that's just not reality. I mean, if you're only trying to get great Sundays, then you're never going to have consistency. And so we just firmly believe that if you build a great team of great people, then you can't help but have great Sundays, because stuff's going to happen on Sunday morning. And I don't care how many rock stars you have on the platform, if they're not great people, it's not going to be good, right? And we have this other phrase that we say, like, toxic trumps talent every day of the week, right? I don't care if Chris Talman walks through the doors of my church and says, hey, I want to be on the worship team. If he's a jerk, he's not on the team, right? Now, I don't know Chris Talman personally. I'm sure you're a great guy, dude. We love your music, or love the music that you capitalize on that other people write. You know what I mean?
Well, we better tell Chris right now. I mean, just sorry, Chris, buddy. You're not. We love you, but you're not. Sorry, you can't be on the worship team. No, if you're watching, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, he would have to text the word worship to our text and church line, and then he goes into this.
Right.
That's the same process for everybody. Anyway, but point being, we have to develop people first, and so if someone were to walk into like our Thursday night rehearsal, and this is the way I coach all my coaching clients, is that again we have to develop our teams musically, relationally, and spiritually. But if someone were to walk in, they would see at 6:55, they would see a 5-minute countdown for rehearsal, right? And then at 7:00 we start, and we start with a worship team devotional that's led by somebody else other than me, right? And then we go into kind of like a training time, like maybe a worship workshop lesson, or maybe we do some game film review, what I call, like we'll watch the live stream like on mute. And then we'll kind of ask each other, hey, do we look prepared? Are we engaging the congregation? Like there's all these things. And then we get to kind of the music part. And then we wrap up in prayer. And I can just tell you that when you only allow, your team at rehearsal to play for 20 or 30 minutes, they're not able to learn the song at rehearsal. So then they have to practice on their own time.
Right. I was going to say
Because
that remote practice is required.
practice is personal, rehearsal is relational, right?
Right.
The rehearsal is we're just putting together all the collective efforts of everybody's individual practice and making one unified sound, right? But what I mean about developing great people is we have to give them opportunities outside of just Sunday morning on the platform to succeed. And I have learned so much from my fellow teammates when they're the ones leading the devotional and they're putting their 2 cents in, and I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Right. Or then when we're talking about game film review and we're discussing, hey, when we open up our arms, that's a physical act of surrender, and like other people are contributing to this. It's the discussions, of the trainings that we're talking about that is really developing the team. I'm just sort of facilitating it. Right. I'm just kind of traffic cop. Okay, we're going to do this and then this, and, kind of lining everything up. And so how I judge a great worship team is how they rehearse. I really do.
Like, and it's not by this. It's also not the size of the worship team that matters either.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right. You could have 2 people, Sister Betty on the piano and, you on the guitar and with the vocal mic. I mean, it doesn't matter the size of the worship team. The principles all still apply.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that leads me into my question for you. When we consider all of the resources that we have available to us nowadays, right? I mean, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have this kind of resource information. But when we consider all the things that we have right now to train worship leaders, between having YouTube University or some sort of, online Udemy class, or maybe just taking a conference or something in that nature, maybe even a college courses that you're able to take at a community school, what really sets worship team coach above the rest? What puts you guys ahead to giving that particular amount of information? What drives that?
Yeah, well, we just feel like there's opportunity right now, because if someone graduates high school, they can go to Liberty, they can go to Cedarville, they can go to these universities now who have like worship arts programs, and they're actually doing what we're doing now, right? 20 years ago, if you went to one of those schools, it was probably more just like choral conducting, right? And old school SATB, piano, organ, that type of stuff. And now, like, we've gone from that as like the music minister, right? That was probably the title back in the day, to now it's the worship leader or the worship arts pastor or whatever. And there's a lot more responsibility, right? And so we were given a lot of just platform time in terms of like being able to lead a church, but not everybody who's leading a church from a platform has like the right theology. They don't have the right leadership training, but they're just kind of expected to do that. And now they have to run a band, right? An actual band. Oh, and they have to do live stream and their camera crews and all this other production stuff that like it just kind of gets thrust upon the worship leader. And so we really exist to be able to equip our team members to help out with that. And it's not just hey, I want to delegate everything so I don't have to do anything. It's like, no, it's not about that. Okay. How many people can we develop? How many people can we multiply? How many people can we recruit to then go and do what we do here? Because there's going to be a day for everybody, right?
Right.
And we want them to be able to equip them to launch maybe something else. Maybe they move because of a job change, but maybe they're able to still be a part of a team down the road because of things that we've taught, right? And so there's a big gap, an education gap of like how to actually run a band. Right. That's different. And, like I said, I'm classically trained. My degree is in music education, but running a worship band, completely different. I'm not just, this isn't just, high school choir or band or anything like that. It's a different skill set. And, I've even had other colleagues who've gone to, conservatories that they can't run a band because it's, you're running people, right? If that makes sense. And it's not just SATB, hey, everybody follow me. We're following exactly what the anthem sheet music says, that type of stuff. And so there's the people aspect of it. Whereas like 15, 20 years ago, you didn't have that.
Right.
And so now it's like, how do I develop people? How do I actually, because I don't care what the title is of the person like kind of facilitating all the worship. They're a pastor. Like they are shepherding people every single week, right? And they have to shepherd their team first.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
So we're just held to a higher standard and, as worship people. And so we supply not just resources and stuff like that, but just the coaching. I mean, we kind of have this phenomenon now where everybody agrees like, oh yeah, I need a mentor. Yeah, I need a coach, but then nobody wants to pay for it. Right. And it's like, that doesn't make sense, bro.
Links in the description.
Right. Yeah. Right. I'm just being real. And so when I first found, the coaching program, I just started paying for it out of pocket. I did. It was at a church that might not have seen the value in like actually putting dollars towards investing in their people, right? I get that. It's tough. It's tough in ministry. You're working with budgets and boards and getting approval from stuff. I get it. I wasn't gonna let the finances hold up, my team, because I know that when the leader gets better, the team gets better. And so I started investing in it personally. Like, we just made it work. Like, I just had to pick up some extra hours or whatever. We're gonna do it. And then my leadership at the time came to me and said, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I got this coaching call. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting coached. They're like, you have a coach? I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, who's paying for that? I'm like, me. And they're like, how much does that cost? And I told them, they're like, well, we should be paying for that. I'm like, I know. Yeah.
What a great budget pitch. What
Right?
a great budget pitch. Is it working? Yes. Who's paying for it? I am. We should be doing that.
You just got to make it happen. And so I just know that there are a lot of other people out there who wish they could like get some coaching. And so my real role is really just kind of working with that church's leadership and explaining like, hey, we have to be able to invest in our people.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because I just know like how long the search process is to find that right person to be the worship pastor or whatever. And it's like, man, if we could just invest in the people that are already a part of our culture, that are already a good fit, that's everything. And how awesome would it be if we had, 10 to 12 people who could lead on a Sunday morning instead of just one hot shot.
Right. Well, that delegation piece is a key factor there. So, well, let me ask you about some of the processes and things that you guys go through. Right. So, I've went through and looked at a lot of the content you guys had. Thank you again for giving me the ability to take a look at all that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And part of that is the Renovate program that you guys are trying to push out, which I think is going to be fantastic. But can you give me just a basic, like, quick shot rundown of what that all does and how does it help benefit the leaders? Because it's all about systems, is my understanding, right?
Yeah. So systems. So my kind of acronym for that is save yourself some time, energy, and money. Right. That's what a system does. Right. Now we all use systems. We just might not know if they're good or not. Right.
Right.
We have a system for everything. And so we, like, again, that's the not so flashy stuff. Right. The people would say the not so sexy stuff of worship, right? That's like there's the mundane stuff, right? And so we know that these systems really are a reflection of what the ministry is. And so we try to just put things in place for people that, again, save them time, energy, and money, but stuff that like they don't need to be focusing on or like spending time on. So we've talked about kind of like an onboarding process. Another process would be like song selection. Right. A lot of people, that's what they're doing the majority of the week, is like they're scheduling people and they're scheduling songs. Right. But they don't have time to pour into people. And so we have resources that I know save people 4 and 5 hours a week. And so then they're able to use those 4 or 5 hours to actually, work on the ministry instead of in the ministry. Like, there's a difference. I know.
There's a big difference.
Leaders who just wish oh man, I wish we could have a worship team retreat. Or I wish we could just go and play mini golf as a team, but there's no way it's going to happen because we have to spend all of our time on the music. Right. And that type of stuff. And so, like, again, these systems that we put in place, just, again, helps the team, take ownership instead of it all having to fall on one person's shoulders to get everything done. Because there's just too many hats to wear. And we're not all great at every hat that we have to wear. And so we look at, what do you do well? What do you do not so well? Who on your team could step up to do this? Like, where do we need some coaching? But when it comes to the systems, right, everybody should be able to use the system. And, regardless of age or experience or anything like that. But it's a lot of it is planning, right? Planning out, hey, we're going to talk about Christmas in July. We're going to plan that stuff out, right? We know how many Sundays we're going to have. Right. So, like, how many songs are we going to rotate? What did we do last year? What worked well? Those types of things. But breaking down, like, what is the most effective way to do this?
Right.
And I guess we just have these, and it's a lot of content. It really is. But just kind of, we believe there are 8 ministry systems that we all use. That's why it's called Renovate, right? Kind of the fancy marketing thing on that with the 8 number on there. But so anywhere from, like I said, song selection to recruitment to onboarding to actually teaching people how to arrange, right? Music, because I guarantee a lot of live streams that I watch, it's just everybody singing every single note the whole time. Everybody's playing. It's just a blob of noise.
Come on.
Right?
Yep.
That's all that is. And so getting people to realize, like, oh, we could start out with one vocalist and then we could layer a couple more at the chorus. Wow. Right. So just
Mind
simple,
blowing.
simple nuts and bolts of arranging and develop, even just understanding like the sonic spectrum, right? That like, the keyboard player doesn't need to be playing 10 fingers all the time, those types of things. But, pouring into those people to get them to understand like, oh, there's a lot that goes into this, right?
Yeah.
Or then
absolutely.
even just like, segues and transitions. Like transitions happen, whether you plan them or not, they're going to happen. Right. How do we get on the platform? How do we get off the platform? Who's coming up to speak? Who's doing the host role? Like who's going to turn that microphone on? Like all those segues. And again, that doesn't take any talent. That just takes preparation.
Right.
And so we have a lot of just kind of done for you resources of like, hey, let's plug in kind of like your order of worship. And then how do we get from each element, right? What segue are we going to use? Are we going to use a prayer? Is there going to be a bumper video? Is somebody coming up, whatever, all those transitions, and really putting things on paper and being like, hey, is this the best flow?
Right.
Yeah. And then communicating that with the senior pastor of like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, this song could work really well if we flow this into this thing, but you're kind of speaking on this, just so all those planning things, but just getting everybody on the same page. And those are all systems, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what our Renovate course is. It's systems that we use for ministry.
Yeah, it seems very in depth, and there's a lot of portional things with it where people, like you said, we're unconscious that we use systems all the time, and I can tell you that my wife took a good portion of your guys' courses a while back, and she started implementing some of those things, and there's been a lot of tightness that has occurred in the group, not just in like the direction of the actual worship ministry, but then relationally, those things actually tie you closer together too. Yep. Like they bring you in, you're going on vacations together, or the whole stage is gone. There's no one on the worship team there because you're on vacations. But and that's happened to us several times. But it's one of those things. But you talked about transitions, and I know you were talking about on stage, off stage, transitioning songs, welcome worship time, whatever. But I want to talk about a different transition. So it sounds like not just Renovate, but this is a system and this is a program that you can take with you regardless of where you're at. Like you can actually implement this in multiple different churches as your ministry changes, or when you leave one church to go pastor at another church or do ministry in another church, you're able to take these systems. So it's an ingraining thing that I'm hearing, right? Like, so so all of that brings not only, and what I'm seeing, it not only brings like stability to the worship leader, but even when the worship leader or the media pastor leaves, that still adds stability into the worship team until they have an interim or they find somebody to replace, right? So that whole stability thing, I think, is probably the one thing that I'm like more honed in on, because there's a lot of worship ministries out there, and there's and I don't even think, Matt, just as I'm talking with you, I don't even think this just goes to worship.
No,
right? I think this is a field thing. Like you're putting this into the entire battalion of your worship team, your worship arts team, your media structure. Like these things not only apply to the guy and girl standing on the front of the stage leading, and then leading the people who are doing the drums or whatever, but it also applies to the people in the behind the scenes. Because a lot of times that same person is operating both roles. And if they're not, like with my wife and I, we're not. Like I handle that side of the puzzle, she handles the front worship side of the puzzle. Nice. And we work together in that regard. But there's like, I can see how this actually flows into every aspect of a minister and how they would actually go about structuring everything. So that leads me to this next question. We have talked before, you and I, about mindsets, right? We know it's like everybody's got a mindset. Everybody's got a butt. Everybody's got a mindset, right? And that's where I'm leading into like this thought process of like, how does worship team coach actually reset that mindset? More so, we've talked about this, about the church's mindset over a longer period of like how those people begin to implement that system, but also how do they effectively, take a worship team on a course correction, and what does that mindset change actually look like? Like, how do they change the focus, and how does worship team coach bring that into alignment?
Yeah, well, let me use another sports analogy here. So obviously we're in Ohio, so Buckeyes, OHIO.
That's OHIO.
Yeah, let's go. Although I will use a different coach for this example. So let's be real. Let's look at Nick Saban.
Okay.
Right? He's been at schools like Toledo and Michigan State and LSU and Alabama, right? But it's all about Nick Saban's systems, right? That's how you know if it's an effective system, if you can go to different places and it still work,
Right.
right? And so, Saban and, Dabo Sweeney and all these guys, they're big on culture, right? They're big on developing, young men, right? For the not just, on the field, but off the field. They're developing them for life, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the approach that we use. But from day one, that first practice, that first, weightlifting session that Nick Saban or these other just amazing coaches have, they're talking about culture right away.
Right.
And so that's the approach we take. So when we work with a church, with a worship leader, with a team member, one of the first questions we ask is like, hey, what's the vision for the worship team?
Mhm.
Right? And they're like, well, and then they try to give me a Sunday school answer, right? And I'm like, no, man, like,
Sunday school answer.
right? You know what I'm saying? And
Jesus, the Bible, the Holy
right,
Spirit,
right,
and
yeah,
the communion, right?
yeah,
Like,
right. And I'm like, no, what's the vision for the worship team? And they just take a minute to kind of respond. And then I
right.
say, okay, then I get senior pastor or lead pastor or whatever, whoever that person is. I get them on the horn and I say, hey, what's your vision for the worship team?
And
A
what
lot
do
of
you
times it's
find?
different. A lot
What
of
do you
times it's
find is
different.
typically the answer?
So it depends on it depends on sometimes the age of the senior pastor that I'm talking to,
Sure.
because I got this baby face and people think like, who's this young punk talking to me about like vision, and stuff like that. Like I've got all this John MacArthur training, whatever. That's usually kind of the vibe I get from somebody. And a lot of times we'll get the answer, of like the Great Commission and stuff like that, right? Or
Right.
I'll get hey, our role is to admonish one another by singing, that type of stuff. But very rarely do I get someone that'll say, our mission is to develop people, right?
Mhm.
So that we can have them lead other people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so that's a critical question. I have them actually do this experiment in like a rehearsal. It's old school. I'll have the leader get out a dry erase board and they'll write that question on the board. What's the vision for the worship team? Right. And then you just kind of popcorn answer it from your team. Right. And then you develop what that vision is going to really be. And then
Yeah.
everything points to that vision. So it's like, hey, if our vision is, to equip and empower people, something like that, right? Okay, how do we do that?
Right.
How do we equip and how do we empower people? So everything, points to the mission, right? And then we ask the question of like, hey, how do we fit into that? And a lot of times, like I have to just do some consulting with like the worship person and the senior pastor because sometimes they are not aligned, right? And
Sure.
and that partnership has to be just 100% together.
Well, yeah, if you don't have solid leadership behind your leadership,
Yeah,
if
just
you don't have somebody who's like willing to step up behind you 100%, or if you are at odds with that individual, especially if we all are under a covering in leadership,
mhm,
that
mhm.
that really does a strenuous amount of
it's
activity.
it's
Yeah,
never going to work.
absolutely.
I look at it kind of like as the senior pastor, lead pastor, whatever title it is. They're kind of like their head coach, and then the worship
Yeah.
person kind of like offensive coordinator.
Yeah, the OC. Right.
Right
Yeah.
on that. It's really important. Like, but we have to understand who's calling the plays here, right? On that, which is big. So we ask that question of like, hey, what's the vision for the worship team? And then I'll have the worship person ask the lead pastor, hey, so how do I fit into that vision?
Mhm.
Like, what is
Mhm.
my role for that? And really just getting clear expectations from leadership of what they should be doing.
Right, exactly.
And
Right,
then
you're
they can
setting a
go from there.
precedent on it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're setting the precedent on it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a problem sometimes in ministry, whether you're a leader in a ministry or you're I don't wanna say subservient in the ministry, but maybe you're just a volunteer.
Mhm.
There's a like overcasted understanding, like people just they don't like that.
Yeah.
The precedent has to be set. They don't know what they're supposed to do, and then or what direction they're supposed to take, or how they're supposed to manipulate something, especially if you're fresh out of college,
Mhm.
or maybe this is just your second go around and your first
Mhm.
one didn't go so hot,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So yeah, so take me through give me an understanding. Like, I'm a student of
Mhm.
yours, right? I'm going in, like, give me a quick breakdown of what the time frame is, like what size church is this for? How do you like what is the process that an individual student would go through with you in a consultation? Really quickly, just give me the outline of how this works.
Yeah. So when we're meeting with somebody for the first time, we do just a 15-minute old school phone call. like not even Zoom. Like I'm just on the phone with them, right?
Right.
And we talk about
A rotary phone, right?
yeah,
A
right,
rotary
yeah,
phone
yeah.
with the 30-foot extension cord
Let's go.
going
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
wall,
I
right?
don't know, maybe we might have wireless. It might be you could be in the backyard and still get it connected.
Okay, there
Anyway,
you go.
so
Got it.
we call. I just feel like it's a little bit more informal, right? Because
Right.
people don't know me and they're kind of like, this is. I know people are already a little bit just nervous about like, okay, I'm calling for like a coaching consultation. Like it feels weird, right? But we make it just very relaxed. It's 15 minutes, and we talk about three things, right? We talk about the future, like where would you like the ministry to be in the next year to 18 months, right? And so we kind of do that vision casting, like we dream big, right? And then we talk about how things are now, like the reality. Where are things at? Are people prepared? Are they engaging? Does it look like they want to be there? Those types of questions. And then we look at what are some of the obstacles that could be in the way of us getting to that future team 12 to 18 months from now. Right? So we kind of develop that plan. And then, we talk about what resources that we can provide to help get that plan, because each church is slightly different. However, we know that like systems work across the board, right? And so for one church that maybe say they're under 100, which a lot of churches are, right? And maybe they don't have a staff person, right? Then like our intensive coaching program is not going to be for them. Because that person's working a job and just trying to get through Sunday. Right. We have like this. It's intensive coaching, and we're getting real, and we're keeping each other accountable, and that type of stuff. And there's time that they have to put in for that coaching program, or it's just a waste of the investment financially, right? So we could offer something like our worship workshop series, which is bite-sized video training content that we actually encourage people to watch as a team. And then they can discuss it. However, there are opportunities where people can kind of have their own login and go at their own pace and that type of stuff, which is fine. But it depends on what the church needs. And, if it's going to be a good fit, because we're not the best fit for everybody. We get that. Right. A lot of times someone will call me and they'll say like, hey, we're trying to match up Ableton to talk with Pro Presenter and to do all that stuff. Like, that's not us. It's not. Like, we can help with some of that stuff, but we're not the people that's going to, come out on site and rewire their PA. Like
right. Yeah. You need an AVL guy for that.
Yeah. Right. That's Jake Goslin, right? That's
there you go.
Over there. Right. And he's a master at that stuff. He really is. But if you want to develop people and you want those people to be able to develop other people, right. Then that's who we are. And that's what we do. We like my biggest thing is preventing burnout from people, because a lot of times someone will call me and they're already burnt out. Like they're already done. Like this, like sometimes I'm the last call. I'm like, look, if we don't change something, like I'm walking away from ministry.
Right.
Stuff like that.
And burnout is definitely, I mean, when you get to the end of that wick, it takes you to discouragement, to depression, to an anxiety thing. And then you end up making irrational decisions based on those things. And I would know, because I've been in that boat many, many times. So yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I have maybe a couple little other questions. One other question for you.
Okay.
And where can we find Worship Team Coach?
Yeah, so worshipteamcoach.com, right, or worshipworkshop.com, and you'll click on either of those links, and we'll put another link in the description just to book a 15-minute call with me. It'll be a free call, and we'll just talk about those three things. Again, number one, where would you like the ministry to be in a year to 18 months? Where is that now, and what are some possible hurdles that could be in the way? And so we're to just kind of jump over the hurdles before they're even there. Type thing. So that's how you get a hold of us. worshipteamcoach.com, worshipworkshop.com.
Fantastic. And are you on any social media channels?
Yeah, we're on Facebook on there as well, and we're on some of our stuff's on YouTube. And we love technology. We want to embrace that as much as possible. But again, ministry is messy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I tell people all the time, hey, the best part of ministry is the people.
Yes.
And the worst part of ministry is the people.
The people, right? Exactly.
And, kind of tongue in cheek there. But we like I said, we want to embrace technology, but still we're developing people. So that's why we start with just a simple phone call.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
Develop that relationship.
It is. And because it's so relationship based. And we know that if we don't give people the opportunity to weigh in, they're never going to buy in.
Oh, yeah. Right? Exactly.
And people are going to be resistant to change.
Exactly.
Right? People are afraid of what they don't know and don't understand. And so people are going to have shields up when they hear worship team coach. No, we're fine, man. We crank out Sundays all the time. We don't need any of this stuff. Well, all your
fingers on full. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Defense mode pops up, and everybody
right,
gets back to their own mindset and being like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's just
well, and
yeah.
there's a lot to be said about ego driven issues too.
Oh,
So
and again, I say that because I was that guy. I really was like, man, it's all about me, bro. Like we good. Like I can just do this, right? And it's not,
right,
the rock star mentality is just kind of the worst mentality you can have.
yeah,
It's like my dream for every worship team, including the one that I'm leading right now, is for a first time guest to walk into the church and look at what's happening on the platform, and they would really have to think hard of like, okay, who's on staff here? Who's
yeah,
all this? Right?
yeah,
If it takes like 3 or 4 songs for them to finally figure out like who that person might be or whatever, then that's a win. It is,
right,
because we can teach people how to do things, but they have to be coachable, and we have to be coachable. And
right,
so we have to be able to take the time to invest to build great teams, so we can't help but have great Sundays.
right, right, and it helps to know musically as well how to do things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It really does, guys. Listen, we're not holding back a punch there. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just walk up and start saying you know how to play guitar, don't know how to play guitar.
Right. And
Just
so, yeah, again, but that's a process, right?
right, it's a
So it's the
process.
same when join the worship team, right? So what do you have in place? How
Right.
can you say no as soon as possible?
Right, saying
Right.
no to the person who can't play. I
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of that problem because I'm pretty much like, let's just get a warm body up here right now. I'll
Yeah.
teach you how to play. Just come
Hey, I
on.
mean, Psalm 33:3 is pretty specific of play
Yes.
skillfully unto the Lord.
Skillfully. Yes. Well, there's some of us who are still developing those skills. So.
Yeah, and believe me, I understand sometimes we just have the make a joyful noise people, and I get that. I really do. I get that, but we can develop that. But again, having systems in place for, hey, how do we train this person up to then be able to be on the platform? Maybe it's not a no, maybe it's just a not now
Right.
or not
Absolutely.
yet. And so, how
Absolutely.
do you say that? How do you have those critical conversations with
Right.
people? We have the
Yeah.
systems to make that happen. Yeah.
All good stuff, man. Matt, it's been an awesome pleasure having you here today. And I'm so grateful for your time. And I'm glad that you are doing well. And I hope that you continue to do well. And we'll keep this conversation alive more and more. We'll keep talking together. And hopefully we'll have Matt come on board with a live show episode with us that we're
Oh, that'd be cool.
working. Just, hey, this is an exclusive right now that we're working on a actual live show for our Facebook group for live streaming for churches. So if you don't know what that Facebook group looks like, or if you've never been into it, we're agnostic when it comes to the fact that you're a church. You just be a church. I don't care what denomination you're with. Just join the Facebook group. We love to help people in there, and it'll help out get you some more training. And we're going to put content like this in there very soon. So again, Matt, thank you for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Gary, man. Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks, man.
Thanks, bud. I appreciate you too. All right. Listen, friends, this has been another installment of the BoxCast podcast, and I am incredibly grateful for Matt joining us. But I also want to say we're incredibly thankful for you as well. Without you, without views, without people telling us what we're doing in the content, without the church world saying, hey, we like or we don't like something, we cannot continue to do this without your support and your help. So I'm asking you that if you've watched this video, if you've made it to the end, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm asking that you like this content, you hit that subscribe button, and you share this content out, because it is because of you that BoxCast has decided that we want to take this direction. We want to help you, the user, not only with BoxCast, but with all kinds of production, all kinds of ministry related things. And so we're bringing thought leaders on who could help make that happen. So if you like this stuff, please do those things, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share. And again, thank you for joining me. And I, as always, cannot wait to see you on the next video. Happy streaming, friends.